Welcome to VetTween.
This episode is brought to you by Kitcaster. Kitcaster books you on top podcasts. How do funded startup founders attract prospects and talent? Podcast interviews. How do entrepreneurs with exits find new deals? Podcast interviews. How do C-suite execs differentiate in crowded markets? Podcast interviews. Kitcaster books you on top podcasts. Click the link in the show notes for a special offer. Celebrate good conversation.
This podcast is brought to you by BitIRA, my affiliate partner. BitIRA leads the industry in helping consumers diversify their retirement accounts with cryptocurrency investments. Why BitIRA? Because they are among the most secure and compliant digital IRA solutions, guys, providers on the market. Their uncompromising commitment to security includes storing consumers' cryptocurrency in cold storage within grade V nuclear bunkers, protecting consumers' stored cryptocurrency with end-to-end insurance, complying proactively with regulations by using regulated exchanges and registering with the U.S. government. Every asset class carries its own set of advantages. The key is achieving your financial objectives and growing your wealth is understanding those advantages and learning to balance your investments across a range of appropriate asset classes suited to your unique situation. So per notice 2014 to 2021 from the Internal Revenue Services, digital currencies are treated as personal properties for tax purposes, thus making them eligible to be held inside a digital IRA account. That means that any gains you occur through your digital currency investments remain tax-free until you withdraw them from your retirement account as a distribution. And here's something else that many people don't know. If you sell your digital currencies within your IRA without taking a distribution, any gains that you may have made can be reinvested in other asset classes. In other words, your IRA does not need to remain entirely in digital assets to keep this tax deferred designation. The current cryptocurrencies you can actually invest in BitIRA are Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, Chainlink, Ethereum, Ethereum Classic, Zcash, and Stellar Lumens. Welcome to the future. I'm BioChefT, and guys, click my BitIRA link, affiliate link, right in the description to learn more and get yourself a free guide on digital IRAs. Peace. How's it going? You're in Texas, right?
Yep. Yes, sir. I'm in Texas.
That's
Dallas.
Awesome, man. Dallas. Nice. Texas is doing some great things with technology, man.
I agree. It's like the inflow of, the Silicon Valley. Yeah, everything's coming this way.
I'm definitely big into the whole blockchain crypto area. So I follow a lot of the tech companies that are moving out there and doing some fascinating stuff with blockchain, which has been really cool. And it seems like Texas has been pretty much embracing it, which is awesome.
Yeah, so far I'm grateful that they've been amenable to kind of incorporating that more and not having passed any laws that's kind of canceled it out. So I'm good. I'm grateful.
Right. So Kordel, just for the viewers and listeners, can you maybe just give a little intro to yourself, like what you're doing? I think Seekar is a company of yours, Seekar Technology, right?
Yes. Seekar Technologies is a machine learning artificial intelligence company. And part of what we built, part of our company's technology just got purchased by another company. But primarily what we're doing is we're building algorithmic trading software that is basically running a fund that can be tokenized by cryptocurrency.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, that's what we're focused on right now.
That's awesome. So how exactly does that work?
So the idea is like right now, if you want to invest in a typical hedge fund, there's quite a few barriers to entry. There's quite a few requirements. I think net worth is one of them. There's a lot more governance by the SEC and kind of just how much you can invest and what you need to the minimum amount you can invest. And for people who aren't quite that wealthy, right, it's kind of you can't really invest, and that's not an option. So by allowing a fund to be tokenized by cryptocurrency, you can effectively make shares of that fund and allow people to purchase them without having the barriers to entry of a typical hedge fund. So you have kind of like a hedge fund like structure, but it's not a hedge fund, right? And so the idea is to have the fund that is basically run by our algorithmic trading AI that does both stocks and cryptocurrencies, but you're able to buy a share of that fund. And obviously, if it's performing well, it's in your interest to you buy a share of that fund as part of a crypto token.
And you'll be able to set like sell orders and buy orders and all that stuff, and it comes with the whole analytics with that.
Yes, that is the intent. So the idea is to have it be fully autonomous, so there's no human intervention.
Wow. And are you're still in like beta testing right now with that?
Yes, yeah, it is not released yet.
Okay, and how is that going?
It's going very well. So we basically stratify like a small pot of money for every algorithm, because there's several algorithms. There's not just one, and we tested for trying to see what performance does better. If you're looking at day trading versus long-term trading, certain algorithms are going to behave differently, and you're going to see different performance based off of what you use. And then cryptocurrencies behave in an entirely different manner than stocks do, right? We're looking at analyzing social media such as Twitter, Reddit, etc., making sense of people's kind of emotional state, so that you can, and it's how that influences the market. So there's several models that are basically always on and always learning to try to make sense of market data right now.
So algorithm is a part of the whole AI technology. Algorithm develop patterns. That's how you get your data, and the AI technology is able to take that algorithm, analyze, and try to give you more of a precise outcome from it, right?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
There's a lot of data that humans might miss when they look at it. Like algorithmic trading is not really a new thing, but incorporating a large sense of deep learning and being able to analyze kind of social media, that's kind of the angle we're trying to bring, because we're looking at so many other factors that humans might miss in typical as a typical stock trader.
So your audience right now is retail investors, correct?
Correct.
And how do you think this technology will affect them in a positive way, and possibly maybe share what do you think if there are any flaws at all with this technology?
Yeah, so there's flaws with every technology. I mean, I don't think the stock market can be predicted. I think there's ways to have a higher confidence on the direction that the market will move, right? Both for stocks and cryptocurrencies. But it's so dynamic that there's no possible way to actually know what's going to happen. However, if you have a lot of sophistication in these algorithms, you can throttle your risk aversity. So being able to kind of customize your trading strategy, right? So like I said, the intent is to have it to be fully autonomous, but you're able to customize your trading strategy, whether you want to be able to have more risk averse, the opportunity to have a higher reward, a higher return, or less risk aversity, and kind of make sure that you have kind of a steady gain of returns, but it's maybe not quite as prolific. And the advantage of that is that you're kind of able to monitor how your money works for you, and you're able to govern how that's set up, instead of being able to just put your money in the stocks and hope for the best, right? You have all these analytics that are coming in saying, hey, I would suggest you enable this feature. I would suggest this algorithm because it's performing 80% better on this type of stock data for more of our clients, etc. So being able to have all these analytics in real time with a custom trading solution is kind of the edge we are going for. But that being said, since the market can't be predicted, right, that's a flaw in the technology, right? It's a flaw in any stock trading technology.
So would you be able to actually target specific, like for the individual, would they be able to target specific companies that they may be interested in, or maybe have the option of just allowing the AI to look for companies based on data that's developing patterns and all that stuff?
Both. Both options are available. So right now, we have an algorithm that performs really well over chip stocks, like basically just AMD, NVIDIA, Intel, just chip stocks, and that's it. So you really hone in on one sector of the market, and it's much easier to kind of it's much easier to strategize the problem and make sense of data and have a higher confidence in what's going to happen and higher confidence in returns if you don't look at the market in general and you really hone in on a specific set of stocks and a specific set of companies. And so our algorithms, or our trading strategy allows you to select that. If you want to look at the market in general, or, you follow chip stocks or retail stocks significantly, and you feel like, that's an area you want to invest, there's specific algorithms for that have a higher confidence of bringing about better returns.
So if somebody came to you, Kordel, and said, "What is AI?" What would be the simplest way to explain that to them?
The simplest way to explain it, and I usually give, is that AI is software algorithms that basically make decisions without human input. So they basically they don't require input to achieve a certain output. They take in a bunch of data and are able to make decisions about that data without a human explicitly having to say what to do.
Got it. Got it. Now I'm going to back up a little bit. I know in your bio description you did some work back in the COVID pandemic, and you helped some physicians kind of alleviate some of the tension that they were having during the pandemic with, I think, two of your products or one of your products to test for COVID virus much faster. Maybe, can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. So when Seekar first started, we originally built it as image recognition company in various regards, and the coronavirus pandemic gave us an opportunity to kind of adapt that technology for medicine and for the medical field. So what we did is we actually built an app that allows a radiologist or an X-ray technician to import images of chest X-rays and determine whether or not that X-ray had indications of coronavirus, pneumonia, emphysema, etc. So instead of a technician having to look through every image, right, which may take seconds, may take minutes, this algorithm can look through hundreds in the course of just a couple minutes or a few seconds. And so the idea was to try to relieve the demand for radiology technicians and radiologists during the pandemic, as initially when it started, because they were so overwhelmed. We put that through a clinical trial, and it ended up doing 95.5% as good as a
Wow.
board certified radiologist. So, which is pretty good, right?
Yeah.
And again, it's not the last link in the chain. It didn't actually indicate, this person has COVID, put them on a ventilator. It just kind of triaged them to say, to the physician, you have 1,000 patients. Here are the top 30 you should probably look at first. That can to kind of make your job a little easier. So a medical imaging was really the first artificial intelligence based product that we pushed into the medical field. And then following that, we got an opportunity to adapt our AI for a coronavirus breath analyzer that actually detects COVID on a human's breath. So just through a breath sample. And the intent of that breath analyzer was to basically, you're going into a football game, you're going into work, an event, you provide a breath sample, indicates whether or not you have symptoms of COVID, and you have a badge at the end of it that says I tested positive or negative at this date and time. If I'm negative, I'm free to go into work, etc. So those are the two specific coronavirus products that we built using artificial intelligence.
That is super cool, man. I am super fascinated with technology and science and where we're sort of like going with that. I even went back to school to study biotechnology.
Oh,
Biotechnology.
okay.
As a chef, I want to understand on a molecular level what's happening in our body and what is food doing to our cells and stuff like that, and how we can just learn more about that and help the health industry as well. I mean, there's a lot of avenues you can go with biotechnology, but just learning the technology and how science and how they could come together and complement each other is absolutely amazing. Um,
I
so
agree.
that breath technology, what is it called? the actual technology to discover the COVID with that through
So
breathing, right?
yeah, so it's called breathomics is the name of the technology, and it's basically just analyzing different chemical compounds,
Uh,
gaseous compounds in the breath as it exits the body.
wow, wow. Well, so how I also noticed that you're also working with neuropsychologists, right? On mental health as well. How is that? How is AI helping with that whole area right there? What exactly you guys are discovering and finding out? And are there any sort of like information that you think that's going to be coming out publicly to help mental health at all with that?
Sure. So this effort in particular that we were working with neuropsychologists on was to basically help address a situation when a patient comes in and they're getting treated potentially for some neuropsychological condition, and we were focused primarily on looking at PTSD, depression, and Alzheimer's and Parkinson's initially. So as an example, the patient comes in and they're getting reviewed by the neuropsychologist. We 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 built a mobile app that you ran on a tablet. So you had, and we got the patient's consent before doing this as part of a study. But the tablet had a camera that looked at the neuropsychologist, and then had a camera that looked at the back camera that looked at the patient. And what the app was doing was tracking facial expressions, bodily movement, kind of the idiosyncrasies of how they move and how they respond, while also analyzing their speech, to try to determine, at what points in the conversation were there indicators of, potential Parkinson's, right? Were they tapping their feet? Or, was there uncontrollable bodily movements in any fashion? Was there slurred speech during any point in the conversation? Were they maybe more squeamish to talk about certain things that the neuropsychologist may want to revisit in order to provide a better diagnosis? So those types of questions were kind of what we were trying to answer to, again, help relieve physician demand during the pandemic, because there was kind of a lot of this cabin fever depression that developed, in which the physicians we were talking to were receiving excessive demand. And what was really interesting about that technology is that, at the end of the session, the app it created a movie script style transcript of, the doctor said this, the patient said this, etc. And so by analyzing speech and analyzing all the bodily movements that the patient accrued throughout the session, it's able to kind of advise the neuropsychologist on what it picked up. And what was really cool is then the neuropsychologist went back and said, "No, this is incorrect," or "I don't agree with this," or "Oh, okay, I didn't pick up on that. That's an interesting point. I'll go. I didn't consider this." And so the AI was making the neuropsychologist better, while this neuropsychologist was making the AI better. And it was this really beautiful dance between humans and AI that was really cool to see.
Wow, wow. Do you think this AI technology is something that can be used in the cancer sector as well? Or have you seen any movement in that area at all?
Yeah, it's emotional data and psychological data is incredibly hard to like quantify and make, because if you look at like the reason we started with three specific medical conditions is because it's like, well, how do you quantify Parkinson's, right? Like at what point? I mean, there's symptoms, but it's like it's not like how many taps of their feet per minute, right? Or do you quantify
Right, right.
Parkinson's at, right? How many uncontrollable bodily movements? And so that was difficult in itself. But I do think by kind of providing that level of analysis towards, different cancers, I definitely think it can be done. And I definitely think it's valuable because you're analyzing emotional state, a mental state of the patient, and you're able to, instead of just a physical state, right? So I think it definitely can be applied to cancer research, but we didn't investigate that at the time we were
Right.
building this.
Do you think it's difficult to develop AI technology in the medical field?
Yes, absolutely. It's very difficult.
Really? Why is that?
Well, if an AI model like Instagram, Facebook, social media sites, they have AI models that are doing automatic tagging, right? Facial recognition. And if one of those is wrong, then the
Mm,
consequences are not that severe, right? It might upset somebody, but no one's lives are at stake. However, AI in the medical field, if you provide an incorrect classification, it could these are grave mistakes, right? It could potentially ruin somebody's life. And so, it's a lot harder to try to build a solution that people will adopt because they're scared. So by garnering trust with physicians, which is what we're trying to do, right? I think there's a huge opportunity for AI to augment physicians' capabilities and really provide them with a massive amount of situational awareness to make their jobs better. But it should never be the last link in the chain saying AI should never diagnose somebody, in my opinion, just because it's not good enough yet. We're not there yet with the technology. And everything's got to go through a clinical trial.
Right.
So, which costs money and time, right? And
right.
So that makes any medical-based venture difficult, but especially with AI.
Right. I know in the whole crypto blockchain sector, a lot of people are feeling like the U.S. is like lagging behind on technology, especially with blockchain and crypto. Do you feel the same way with AI?
Yes and no. So if you compare us to China, they're kicking our tail with how much further they are with artificial intelligence, and that becomes scary, right? Because AI it's a fairly young technology, but it has an opportunity to greatly impact the direction of the world in very many facets.
Right.
However, there's not really any restrictions on how AI is used in China. So there's huge violations of people's privacy, depending on how you look at it. And the US is to some degree protecting people's privacy by not employing facial recognition at every possible domain and not, they're not allowing algorithms to really take over our lives yet. So,
It's a little
can we
scary,
be,
man.
yeah,
Sorry.
right. It is, it's like, can we be the leader in this race? Absolutely. We definitely can, but it comes at a cost. And, I don't know the best way to go about that, but, yeah, it's an interesting scenario for sure.
What do you think are some of the myths about your field, if there's any?
Some of the myths.
Yeah, that you can actually maybe debunk. Maybe there's myths out there that people think about like AI technology, and you're like, no, it actually goes like this. Something along those lines.
So I see a lot of people when they hear AI, they think Terminator and they think, iRobot, and we are so far away from that. I mean, even if you look at some of the leaders in the game, we're so far away from actually building something that is intelligent enough to say, I know who I am, I know where I fit in society, and I know and really have a significant impact in that regard. The more not existential, but the more prolific threats with AI are kind of with, what it can do with privacy violation and social media. So that's probably one myth I would debunk. The other is probably around like the algorithmic trading sector, in which there's a lot of things I read online where machine learning models are predicting the future, right? And it's actually like they claim they can predict the stock market, and that's I don't agree with that. I don't think that no matter how sophisticated the algorithm is, I don't think it's possible to predict the market in any regard. But I do think it's possible for AI to provide a lot more insight and increased confidence in how the market's going to move in general, not precisely, but generally. Be careful if you see things online that says, machine learning model can provide 200% returns in 5 days for AI algorithms. It's
Right.
like, no,
Right.
that doesn't work like that. Otherwise, we'd all be billionaires,
Sure. So, do you think because of those parameters, there aren't that many companies out there using AI as of yet? Is that one of the situations we're probably dealing with? There's probably just a few companies out there that's using this actual technology.
In regards to general, or in regards to just medicine, or just companies in general?
Maybe you can tap into general, but I would like to explore medical. That would be nice.
Mm-hmm. I see a lot of AI-based startups, and so I think there are a lot of companies using artificial intelligence, but it seems that because it's very easy, I mean, to download neural networks online or artificial intelligence models online, and make them work, right? But
right.
It's a lot of it is still so young and still in theory that the actual practical use cases in which we are dependent on AI to actually provide a very good service is still pretty small. Google, Apple, Amazon, obviously, they're doing an excellent job of providing very sophisticated solutions. So I'd say there's a lot of companies that are actually working in AI, but it's not a nearly the degree of, it doesn't nearly entail the degree of our lives that it will with over the next coming years. It's going to get much more prolific.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to tap into medicine really quick, but for the medical field, I think there are becoming more artificial intelligence based companies, but going back to kind of the notion I was proposing earlier, that AI is still kind of a little bit scary for the medical field. That's kind of a limiting factor for some companies because, like I said, everything's got to go through a clinical trial, and the consequences of it being wrong are so severe. So that's there's probably less innovation in that sector with AI as there is in the realm of self-driving cars, smart home assistants. But it's definitely increasing for sure.
Where do you see the medical field with AI in about 10 years from now?
In 10 years, I think we're going to actually see artificial intelligence become a real definition of intelligence, and it's going to be actually able to reason. And we're going to actually see iRobot style, machines, not necessarily that are able to operate in that degree, but that are able to reason and that we can have a conversation with, and they understand, how to move about the world and make sense of the world. Right now, the artificial intelligence we have is very narrow. So image recognition, auto tagging people on Facebook and Instagram, that's AI, but it's using in a very narrow field. Smart home assistants using AI in a very narrow field with voice recognition, but coupling everything together and building a machine out of it and being able to actually, like I said, quantify reasoning and a true intelligence is something I think we're going to see in the next 10 years to something that will resemble what we see in pop culture. And it'll be good if we can make sure that it's done the right way.
Right. I mean, currently in the medical field, for some surgeons, they're using robots right now for some surgeries. And is that's probably not AI as of yet, or unless it is, maybe a little bit, just to know where to actually, I guess, perform the surgery on the person. Is that part of AI a little bit, or?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Da Vinci robot in particular is one of the most common robots that I know that are used in surgery, but I'm sure there are a lot of others. But it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier, in that this AI that's being able to really, it's not performing the surgery, but it's providing the doctor with more information, right? So there's cameras that are saying, hey, maybe look here. We find evidence of an infectious site here. That kind of a thing, right? It's not making the final diagnosis, but it's just providing a higher level of situational awareness for the surgeon, for the leading doctor. Those types of systems are going to become a lot better and a lot more prolific, and are going to rapidly increase the productivity of physicians. So I'm excited to see that. And then you couple that with the robotics that are currently available. We're going to see some real leaps in abilities with physicians, which is exciting.
Wow. I know, like in the biotech field, you can kind of venture off into like bioinformatics, where you can actually develop digital models of different diseases and stuff like that, and you can help. I don't want to say diagnose, but at least help understand maybe a diagnosis a little bit more and clearer, and see how you can be a little more efficient with treating it. So that's something I have found to be. And you've probably seen that in the medical field in your field as well.
Right, and that you bring up a good point. Something that I think is very interesting, that I'm sure we'll see in the future, is being able to create like an accurate simulated model of the brain, right? So if you want to simulate, a patient comes in with trauma, and you have a very finite amount of time on how to treat that trauma to the brain. If we could simulate an event, or simulate a series of events, to say this is the most likely cause of bleeding, or this is the most likely cause of what happens psychologically, that would be that's so indispensable to doctors that it would be great. And if we can use AI to build a better model of the human brain, to kind of help with that. I'd like to see that in the future. That'd be very cool.
Yeah, that would be awesome, man. I'm a cancer survivor, so I'm actually fascinated in how that can actually, help more people with cancer, and
Wow.
possibly get to a point where we can actually treat it more efficiently for each individual. I guess you can say, something like that. That would be really cool. AI.
Well, congratulations, and my hat's off to you.
Thank you,
That's excellent.
thank you. AI is amazing, man. Wow, AI is really amazing. Is there anything about your field um, you want to share more of with the viewers and listeners that I probably have missed with a question or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, just in general, like artificial intelligence is kind of a buzzword right now, and so there's a lot of things that are maybe just software and not AI, but if they're described as AI for marketing purposes.
Right.
But it's really, there's a lot of untapped potential with artificial intelligence, and it's a really, really young technology. And that means there are significant opportunities for entrepreneurs and, single people to make pretty big leaps and make a difference with this technology and actually kind of govern the direction in which it goes. It can be very, very beneficial and it can be very, very bad depending on the people developing it. And if we can use it to try to build, a better future, a more secure future, right? We're not building Terminator. We're not building, stock software that's going to make everyone liquidate everyone's accounts, AI that's going to hack everyone's cars and drive them off a cliff, right? We're very sober about how we're building algorithms. We're monitoring it in an ethical manner. I think there's a lot of potential for innovators in the market, and I hope that we can remain steadfast on making sure it's developed for good, and we can have the discipline as engineers. So, I would just encourage entrepreneurs really to look in that market and kind of move forward with confidence that you can make a big impact with AI.
What are some of your, I guess, for somebody that's trying to get into the tech field, or maybe even build their own product, or just build their own business? What are some of your or biggest failures that you can share with people, and maybe how you learned from it? What was your experience? How did you overcome? That might be pretty insightful for some of the listeners and the viewers.
Sure. One of my biggest failures was when we were first starting Seekar is I didn't do enough user feedback. I didn't put the software in the hands of the users to see what they liked and didn't like. And if you don't do that, you're going to do it eventually, and it might just not be in the way you want, right? So in
Sure.
my scenario, we actually got feedback from users after it launched that wasn't very good, right? So we found some very very distinct pain points that could have been addressed in development earlier, but we were too concerned about going fast. We were able to go back and reconcile that, but that's one failure I had. Another failure I've had is kind of micromanaging. Like if you give someone else your software, your source code, right, and you spent years building it, it's kind of hard to let go and
Sure.
be hands off and say, go ahead and take that on. But I found out that the people that we hired and we worked with, if you give people kind of free reign, they're going to do your job better than you will, right? If you trust people to do the job, they did. They ended up making the product better than I ever could have, just because I wasn't in their face all the time micromanaging. So
Right.
that
Right.
was trust people, trust your client, trust your team, that'll usually work out.
Are there any sort of regulation barriers that you had to overcome or face, or still maybe dealing with? I know that on the crypto end, there's a lot of stuff with SEC and all that stuff, whether or not something is security or not, or commodity and all that stuff. So I'm just curious on how that plays out in with AI, especially if you're using AI for trading and stuff.
Yeah, so honestly, we're still learning the ropes,
Okay.
because I want to make sure that everything is in compliance with regulatory law. SEC does have a lot of rules and a lot of guidelines you have to satisfy, and if you don't have the necessary licenses and you don't have the necessary restrictions satisfied, you can really get hosed, and I mean it can be very, very bad. So making sure that we're doing our due diligence and we're speaking to the right people who are knowledgeable about financial regulations, FINRA, SEC, and cryptocurrencies. I mean, cryptocurrencies provide a very, very big opportunity with fintech, but we want to make sure that we don't ruin it for everyone else by going rogue and not satisfying some of the, we're adhering to the red tape, as you'd say. So, there's definitely regulations we've got to satisfy, but we're still trying to figure out exactly what those are.
Are there any cryptocurrency companies that you draw inspiration from?
Yeah, I really
And
enjoy
obviously not financial advice, of course.
Definitely not financial advice. One thing I will say is I really like those companies that build platforms where the currencies can be used for more than just currency. Like, for example, Ethereum. I know Ethereum was built and it can be used for things other than just purchasing. I mean, it can be used as a voting system. It can be used as computational platform. And so the reason I admire those companies is for a couple of reasons. It protects investment, right? People are more willing to buy your cryptocurrency if there's alternate routes in which things could go. If, for example, there's heavy regulation on cryptocurrencies. And secondly, it's just creates, I think, a better technology and really fulfills the true potential of what cryptocurrency can be, in that it's just a better computational platform that's more secure. So Algorand is another one I really like, and Numeraire. But it's I really like those companies that build a platform instead of just a currency.
Right. Algorand is doing some great things. I think they just did something. I think it's a company in Florida dealing with climate change, I believe.
Okay.
I think it was something with climate change. I can't remember, but Algorand is doing some great things and developing a lot of partnerships, which is really cool. And they're tapping into the metaverse as well too. So that's I think everybody's tapping into the metaverse now. There's like big NFTs and metaverse, which is going to be a part of the future too. Which is interesting because that would probably be really interesting to see how, I guess, schools education, and if we're dealing with AI technology, if the metaverse can actually be a part of such a system to kind of help people globally on that level. I did hear something about like where this technology can actually go. It could get to a place where I think you can have a doctor here in the U.S. help another doctor out in a different country through using AI technology. I don't know if you've ever heard of something like that. Um, I don't know if that has to do with like a quantum system or anything like that. But I did read something about that a while back.
I don't have particular exposure to that scenario, but I know, for example, like that Da Vinci robot can be controlled if it's in LA, it can be controlled from New York, and by a doctor, who might by just manipulating, the hands of the Da Vinci robot. So that's pretty fascinating. But the scenario you described is quite interesting. I haven't been exposed to that, but I'm definitely going to read up on it.
So the Da Vinci Code, what exactly is that robot?
As I understand it, the Da Vinci robot is basically a set of arms, like robotic arms, that can be manipulated by a doctor who's inserting his hands in. It basically has very precise control. So, like humans are kind of naturally a little bit shaky, and most people are not too bad, but you still have those micro movements. But these robots allow you to be very, very, very precise in moving things a tenth of a millimeter, 1 millimeter exactly, etc. So it's basically just controlled through like joysticks, as I understand it, but uses a lot of complicated controls algorithms.
That could be it. So, in other words, somebody in New York can operate on somebody in California using that using that system.
As I understand it, yes. I could be wrong on that. That might have been a different system, but I'm very confident it was the Da Vinci robot.
Wow, that's crazy. That's amazing. That's amazing stuff. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, you brought up an interesting point with the metaverse, in that we live at such a great point in history right now, because we have so many technologies that are in their infancy, and there's so much opportunity to see where they're going to go individually and where they're going to go together, between the metaverse, artificial intelligence, cryptocurrencies, quantum computing, augmented reality. It's like all of these things are so young and so we haven't even tapped the potential. And so it'll be really interesting to see where, that goes in 10, 15, 20 years.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. If you can create your own metaverse, what would it be?
Wow, that is an interesting question. One where I would
That
not
just
have to,
came to me.
yeah, one where I wouldn't have to sleep. One where, yeah, I've always interested, if I had those hours back in the day, how much further could I be with my, my goals? And, that would probably be one of them.
Okay.
When I didn't have the bad consequences of, what lack of sleep does to the brain.
Right, right, right. If you could live anywhere in the world, where would that be?
Ooh. I've grown to really like Texas, but I recently had to travel to Switzerland for work, and
Mm.
that is a magnificent place. So I would say that as long as I had an internet signal, I'd want to live somewhere in Switzerland.
Cool, cool, cool. That's awesome, man. And I'll wrap it up with just two more questions, if you don't mind.
Sure,
How,
whatever you want.
how are you personally looking to transform the world or your community?
I personally, I'd like to. So my background and my forte and my goal is artificial intelligence, right? And I really want to be able to try to benefit people's lives with artificial intelligence directly. And we've done so in a variety of ways so far, but I want to see more applications where people are consciously aware of how AI is benefiting them, right? And helping save lives, helping actually make, a better quality of life, whether that's through, having a second source of income through your algorithms, right? Or actually being able to help doctors save more lives because they're more, they're able to, they have more capabilities through artificial intelligence. At the end of my life, if I can look back and say that artificial intelligence was or could not be would not have gone to the degree would not have progressed to the degree that it had by the time I'd been dead if I wasn't if I wasn't a part of it. Uh, I think that's a good legacy to leave behind. So I hope to do something in that regard. Hope to
That's
have that
awesome.
impact.
That's awesome, man. And last question, where can my listeners and viewers find you?
So believe it or not, I'm one of those weirdos that's really active on LinkedIn. So you can find me on LinkedIn,
Cool.
Kordel France, just because it's easier to post case studies of the software, product releases, etc. And then obviously on Twitter, I'm a little less active, but I'm on Twitter as well, I think under Kordel France.
That's awesome. Kordel, thank you so much for this interview, joining the platform. Hopefully, we'll be able to catch up sometime in the future, short term. But thank you for bringing awareness to AI technology and all that you're doing. It's absolutely amazing stuff. Thank you so much, and I look forward to catching up soon.
Thank you to you and your listeners. I really appreciate the time, and I'm a fan of the show. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Catch you in the next one. Peace.
See ya.